Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of the Reimagine Podcast. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing well today, Paul. Thanks so much. It's exciting to be here again and have some friends with us.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to talk about the future of events and how they will help foster more connections, foster more innovation as we kind of travel farther and faster into this new world. Is that right?
Absolutely. And to help us on this conversation, this journey today, we have two individuals with us very well versed in the event space. We have Allie Greene, co-founder and VP of Throwing Star Collective, and Chip McCabe, Director of Placemaking and Events for the Hartford Business Improvement District. And, for the sake of our listeners, Allie, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to Throwing Star Collective.
Sure. Thank you guys first for having us today. We're excited to talk about events with you. I am Allie Greene with Throwing Star Collective, as Laura mentioned, the co-founder and VP, and we are just a baby. We have only been live here for 3 years, so we founded in 2019, and our role is a project management and creative development agency. A lot of people assume based on the things we do and projects we work on that we're an event production team, which we are in an aspect, but in a holistic, larger point of view, start to finish, from creating to execution. We aren't the machine operators, technicians, designers necessarily on site, but we're the minds, the knowledge. We use our experience and our contacts to build the masters in their craft. We bring those people in to create an event and execute it. So we got our journey here to Throwing Star. My husband, the founder, Josh Greene, and myself used to work in events and sports marketing at Red Bull North America, which is where a lot of our time was spent. And since then, since COVID, we are now on our own as an agency, navigating the event world.
Awesome. And Chip, how about yourself?
So I work for the Hartford Business Improvement District, which is a 501c3 nonprofit special services district in downtown Hartford. We handle clean, safe, and marketing, but we also do a lot of placemaking and events, which is what I handle, falls under my silo. My journey to this position is a circuitous one. I worked in the music industry for a while. I've worked for media companies, for a chamber of commerce at one point, all of which I was doing a lot of events, from large-scale music festivals to smaller events of varying size. And so the work that I do for the Hartford Bid mirrors that experience.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for joining us. And Allie, effectively, your company kind of started out of the pandemic. Is that right?
We started pretty much right before. So being somewhat an event company and then getting hit with COVID was pretty disastrous at first and a little scary, as you can imagine. But thankfully, we made it through.
Yeah. Well, as offices, I guess, get redefined, some people are kind of trying to define them back to what they were. Good luck. Good luck doing that. It just feels like events are going to be much, much more important for meeting people than they ever were before. I mean, I guess it'd be hard for either one of you to answer no to that, but maybe you could amplify it. I mean, Allie, how do you see the events changing in terms of what people are expecting, both the people who are sponsoring as well as the people who are showing up?
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point that it is more important now than ever because everything is so digital now and people are starting to come back together. But there's also going to be people who are now going to stick to that digital piece, and how are we going to reach them and that audience? So I think from a holistic view, overall, events are going to be created, planned, and executed as they always have been. And that's not changing, but there's added factors now that COVID has provided us with that are changing the landscape of events. So starting with, I think brands and companies expect now there to be a health and safety hygiene factor added into your plan. So there's a budget item for that now. How do we sanitize, clean, make people comfortable when they come on site to an event? So that's an added aspect. And then on top of that, You're seeing more eco-friendly and sustainable events, I think, too. In the last 6 months, every event I've been to has had heavy focuses on recycling, which is amazing. But they're finding ways to reach that Gen Z audience who they know are on their computers, but if they are going to come on site, how can we make them happy and feel like we're catering to what they want to see the world become now? And I think lastly, on the landscape of events changing since COVID is the technology piece, which we could talk about like forever. But that piece where I said everyone's going more digital now. So how can you reach that audience at home? So whether it's live streaming your event, a lot of brands and companies are adding that into every single event so they can reach the people at home, or adding in a virtual reality aspect where you can actually join the event through your computer screen or through your virtual reality goggles. So there's a lot, I guess there's a lot changing, and it's going to continue to change. I know from a technology side of the RFD wristbands, contactless, like COVID has changed so much in that we have to be so careful when we gather people now that we're catering to the ones who don't necessarily want to be close to people yet or aren't comfortable with that yet. So all of that tying together is, I think most of the shifts in the trends in events in the last year are all related to COVID.
Yeah, Chip, it's you mentioned you're in the music industry. I think Grateful Dead they were so far ahead of every other band, I think, in terms of how they approached the music and the concerts. When they started, everybody was making money on the albums. The concert was to promote the album. Now it's kind of the reverse, but first people to say, hey, come bootleg our music, bring your recorders in, bring your stuff in, and we're going to make this sort of self-generated content as important as the stuff we're doing up here on stage. Are there lessons that you can see to pull from music? And then I guess if we were to sort of say, is the future of corporate events coming? Should we be looking at the music industry again?
Absolutely. We do a lot with live music with the Hartford Bid and downtown Hartford. We actually were set up for the pandemic. We were one of the few organizations that were, in that prior to the pandemic, we decided to move towards what we called the cheaper, faster, lighter model. So instead of having events where we were focusing just on that one large 1 day or 2 day event, we were doing more activations and more events in more places by just having that sort of glorified busking or whatever that looks like, where we were just trying to create that sense of space, right? That sense of place. And so for us, we wound up continuing, even the summer of 2020, continuing to do live music multiple nights a week outdoors on city streets where people could social distance or mask or however they felt safe, and continue to move in that direction. I think that music, even through the pandemic, was the one art form that continued to connect people the way it did prior to the pandemic, right? Because people were still producing it, they were still recording it at home, they were still playing it live in all of these safe spaces outdoors. But just more music moved outdoors than was indoors, right? That was the big change. That was the big shift. And I think when you look towards the music industry has had to shift harder and faster than almost anyone out there, except for maybe newspapers, except for maybe print, right? Because of how their dynamic has shifted and how their monetary gains have shifted. You hit the nail on the head. It used to be you made your money through record sales. Now it's you make your money through the guarantees at the door and whatever merch you can sell on site. And that's it. That's how bands survive these days. And I think when you look at the corporate world absolutely should be looking at the music industry and the event industry and how we've all had to shift and change and how quickly we've had to do it. The pandemic has forced all of us to be able to shift and move like a little tugboat, not a giant liner, right? You saw that liner get stuck in the canal. That to me is what the world is at right now in terms of how they're shifting and changing. We need to be the little dinghy that's just kind of flying around and making those changes as they happen. And I think events, in order to survive, and I'm sure Allie could feel this and agree with this, in order to survive, you have to adapt constantly. That is the way of that world even prior to the pandemic. So I think the pandemic just turned the light switch on for everybody. That being able to adapt and survive is going to be the name of the game moving forward. But there is no more, well, we do this because that's how we've always done it.
So you mentioned Gen Z, Allie, in your comments, and then Chip talking about music. It reminds me of, the opera singer on the balcony during the pandemic who came out at the same time every night to sing, and how the world kind of surrounded themselves around that, or how the bells would ring in Denver for the medical workers every night at the same time. And to me, it's, there's an element of, we should look at the music industry to learn from that and the adaptability and how fast we change. But what I'm curious about are your thoughts around the use of social media and, the Gen Z piece of it, right? So the recycling, the climate, et cetera. Who should the corporate entities, right? So the people who are planning these events, who else should we be listening to, or where are the best places to listen, not only for trends, but also for the people who, feel strong ways about things, and for us to kind of understand that as we go out. So Allie, I guess I'll start with you.
Yes, adapt or die, Chip, you hit that on the head for sure in terms of the pandemic, adapt or die. But in regards to Gen Z and who should we be listening to, I think it's a really good question. And I hate to say this app so much because I feel like I talk about this app every day, but I'm telling you, man, TikTok I know it's silly from at our age and what we're doing and everything, but there is so much being talked about. And I mean, let's not forget about Twitter. We can talk about that too. But the age group on TikTok, what they're focused on and caring about, that's like the only reason I knew those things is because I'll just scroll and they're talking about literally you go on and you see what they do from start of their day to the end of the day and what they care about throughout that day. So that's how you can truly learn specific to that generation, what they care about. And there's more than just TikTok. But again, I have learned so much scrolling through TikTok in the last few months, especially since the pandemic. And then going back to Twitter and live streaming, I think everyone voices their opinion on Twitter, and you don't have to show videos or face or photos, so people are honest and going to share exactly how they feel on there. So that's another space where you can truly learn what people are caring about from a social media perspective, I would say.
Okay, well, I've got to talk, about the event, Allie, I went to. Your group pulled off in Brooklyn, and just sort of talk through. Maybe you could talk through all sort of the thinking that went around. It was a Formula E race, and first one I'd been to. Now, it was really interesting from a bunch of dimensions, from just me showing up. One is I didn't have to go to some remote location to go to a big experience a Formula One like race. It was middle of Brooklyn. It was super high end. I mean, first of all, Chip, you talk about like kind of changing event spaces. I mean, Allie, you go to Brooklyn to where I guess what is it? So I think you did the cruise.
Brooklyn Cruise Terminal. Yeah.
The cruise terminal. I mean, it's this dumpy looking corrugated metal place where, Chip, I don't know if you've been there, but it's like, okay, maybe if you open up the gate, some like dusty bus drives out. I don't know what to expect. And you sort of transform that into a super high end place. And it was interesting. Every company sort of had its own lounge area. You connected it to the technology and the sustainability of the electric car races. What were sort of the new elements? Like if that had been done like 5 years ago, 10 years ago versus what it is today, I mean, what kind of changed, or what were the questions the problems you were asked to solve for?
Yeah. So again, that one was at the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal. And like you mentioned, a little dumpy, not a pretty space when you first walk up if there's not an event there. So Formula E and the production partner, Dragonfly Media Technologies, partner together and do a really good job of creating that. And it is a tour that's international. So they have their whole branding plans and all of that set in place, but they really did transform that space into something that if you were someone walking through Brooklyn or an attendee like you, it's going to leave a lasting impression when you walk, the second you walk in, it's a literal racetrack in Brooklyn. That's not a normal thing to see. So,
No.
yeah, they did an incredible job with that. And I think had they done that 5 years ago, and yes, we worked on a piece of that, so we were part of that, to see it all come to life. Had you done that 5 years ago, I mean, so we did it this past summer and the summer before, and COVID was the biggest factor. So the pandemic was still going on and is still going on. And I would say the health and safety and hygiene plan, they have a very, very strong focus on that, and they have a full hygiene team that actually comes on site. Clean Vibes is the company that comes and does all the cleaning and sanitization every single day. And I know this isn't on the forefront of, as a consumer, you walk in and you know this, but from a production standpoint, an event standpoint, 5 years ago, I don't think there would have been a hygiene team. I didn't even know that existed, you know? And that's just one small piece, but
Yeah, and I think it was impressive. I mean, Chip and Laura, I go in, you've got very interesting spaces to facilitate conversations between clients and various sponsors, and it just felt enormously spacious, right? Kind of set the tone for discussions. Ton of like screens to see the race. I mean, it was okay, would that have happened 10 years ago? Yeah. Would I have been able to go out and actually race the track with the game set up? No, not possible. Would I have been able to interact with AR experiences with some of your sponsors? I don't think so. Totally novel. And then the fact it was like sustainability was enormous. I noticed like the badges were, I think, cut out of bamboo or something, right? That was a huge part. Tell us about the community, how you had to actually involve the community as well.
Yeah, I think so. From your point as a public attendee, right, it's really cool that it left such a lasting impression on you. And you, although it wasn't bringing necessarily like-minded people to an event, right? It was a public event. You don't have to like racing to go to that and have a good time. You could just be a passerby and enjoy that event. And you were able to walk away with something tangible, not necessarily a physical item, but you can tangibly talk about the things you saw, the screens and the activations, which is really cool to hear. But from a community perspective, the reason I really liked working on this event is because you have to include the community there in Brooklyn, because we're taking over their entire neighborhood. We're utilizing all of their restaurants, all their hotels. Like, we're coming into the neighborhood, taking their Airbnbs, and I think the coolest piece is there's over 200 local community members that actually get hired to come and work. So they're scattered throughout the event, whether they're working in the VIP section or they're doing the credentials in the accreditation center. They're all included and hired to come do that. So it's a really nice way to integrate into the community and not just barge in unauthentically and be like, get out, we're taking over. So I think that is a really important piece that people might not know from the outside.
So Chip, then Laura's got a question for you, but Chip, I'll give you a tough one on the spot. Hey, Laura and I, listen, we had a conference, a day conference, last year on innovation scenarios. What if we wanted to do an innovation week in Hartford? How would you approach it? What would you think through? Like, how would we rethink or reinvent what that event might look like?
So I think Hartford,
and I use innovation broadly.
Yeah, and I think Hartford would be the perfect location for that, first and foremost. So let's talk offline. Let's start your week. I'm ready. I think the first thing you have to do is, to Allie's point, is involve the community, number one. I think the most successful events in Hartford, and really anywhere, are the ones that get the most community engagement. We run a lot, or we don't run them, but the city has a lot of large-scale community events in Hartford, right? You're talking about the Jazz Festival, the Puerto Rican Festival, the Caribbean Parade, all of these communal events that help create that sense of place, right? And that people become invested in. They want the event to succeed. They want the city to succeed. And I think if you're talking about doing something like an innovation week, right? Engaging with local businesses, first and foremost, engaging with those businesses that have put down roots in the city and that are engaging with customers on a one-to-one level, I think would be key for something like that. but then also engaging the corporate community, right? Because you have all of these corporations, these innovative businesses and these models within the city of Hartford or whatever city you're looking to do that I think would be your prime partners. So I think that's where you would want to start is even sourcing, what do they want to see out of this? What would the businesses want to see out of this? What would the corporations want to see out of this? How do they make it so that attendees would be interested in coming to something that's called an innovation week? Because the average person might not be. They might look at that and say, well, what does that even mean? And so by connecting with those businesses that they're already putting their feet in the door, you're already being able to connect back to the consumer that you're trying to hit, that target audience. So that's a really high level way of me answering that question. I hope I answered it for you.
You did. And actually, I'm going to dive a little deeper on one piece of that, right? So you said Innovation Week, someone may hear that and say, what does that mean? How can someone who's thinking about planning an event or actively planning an event utilize elements of the event to help tell that story? So just like Paul could leave the racing event and list out the 10 things that are most memorable for him and helps define what that event is in his eyes. What are some things, Chip, that a planner can go into, the planning portion of it to say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to help not only make my messaging clear about why I'm holding this event, but then, make someone remember it?
I think the biggest question you have to answer first as an event planner is who or what is this event for, right? If your event is literally just like, we want to make bank, we're just going to make money, then I think you're approaching it completely wrong and it's not going to be genuine and people are going to call you out on it, especially on what I call the TikToks because I'm old. You're going to get called out on not having that genuine, authentic experience. So who is this event for? What is it for? And what is the end result you want? Is it to bring awareness to a specific culture? Is it to bring awareness to a specific cause? Is it, what is the function of this event? Is it to connect people? Or is your goal of this event to have those personal connections, which a lot of business and corporate events revolve around? So I think you need to figure that out first as an event producer. You need to ask yourself those questions. For us, when we do events, it's to create a sense of place, right? To give ambiance or whatever it is to the city of Hartford, to the downtown, so that when people are walking around or doing whatever, they're saying, wow, look at all of these cool things to do in downtown Hartford. We want to add to that tapestry, right? And so as an event producer, you have to figure out what are those steps? Who are you doing this for and why? And once you have all of that, the rest is like dominoes. It'll fall into line.
Yeah, I guess other question is, when does the event actually happen, right? Like when does it start and when does it end? And I think I'm seeing some really creative aspects on either end of this. Laura and I were just at InsurTech Connect. We talked about that a little bit. Laura can tell you what we did and I think a little bit about it. And it's only maybe 9 years old. I was at the first one. We had like 800 people at one of them. We thought, wow, this is a lot. Now this year we had 10,000. There were 10,000 people at this event. We're all trying to do innovative stuff on the insurance side. And, what I noticed, and it kind of sort of multiplied, is I saw, a lot of organizations have pre-events, like almost small conferences leading up to said event. Allie, you talked about TikTokers. We had people doing raps beforehand up on LinkedIn. It wasn't TikTok, it was LinkedIn. Now the event app is still active, I noticed. So it seems you have to have an app before. It feels like these pre-events are important. And I also talked to a guy from a company that tracks a lot of startups, and he was telling me how they use these events almost as meetups for their team. They'll get an Airbnb, bring everybody before, have meetings, working sessions, go to conference, and go after. I mean, how do you do this? How do you create legs before and after? I don't know. I'd throw that one over to you.
Yeah, sure. Before, you kind of mentioned how people have met up and done Airbnbs and whatnot in you guys' instance, but whether it's welcome parties or influencer parties. And I'm speaking again kind of specifically to that Gen Z, where they expect something cool. They want to walk in and walk away with something to share with people. And I think we all want to share it, right? We all want to have a way to, whether it's something to take a photo of or video of, and we want to come home and we want to be able to share that with someone. So having that first initial impression, maybe not at the actual event itself, but the pre-event, it's an invite only. 25 people get to come to this and experience this from this brand, and you're the only one. It's exclusive. So I think that's a really neat way to connect and create that emotional connection with those specific people. Let's say they're leaders in that area, you invite them to the pre-event so that they get the up-leveled experience. And then post-event, we've seen this recently with some projects we've worked on, but you walk away 2 weeks later, you might forget about that event, and then a custom t-shirt signed shows up on your doorstep from the event, and you're like, oh my God, what a cool, it ties back, it reminds you of the event, then you're going to share it again, and it brings it all top of mind again. So I think pre, during, and post is all still important. It's not just the event itself.
Hey, Chip, and like the corporate side, like, I guess, what have you seen, or what would you like to see? What's the corporate version of having a big drum circle, right, at these events?
We attend every year the International Downtown Association Conference, which moves all over North America once a year. And it brings in people from literally all over the world who do what we do here in Hartford. The drum circle for that is a lot of the pre and post event engagement, right? So, the tour that you can take of downtown Atlanta, for example, that I went on, where I met people for the first time who do what I do all across the country, who have this vested interest in learning best practices for what other cities are doing. It's great to get everyone in a room and to sit and listen to a presentation. I've been on both ends of that microphone, both as a presenter and hundreds of times sitting in the audience listening. And those things are great and informative, and you can walk out of there with a notebook filled with information. But actually being able to apply some of that knowledge while you're there at the conference or at the event, I think is key, because it makes it tangible in a way that just listening or seeing pictures up on a screen cannot. So that's just my experience from a very informative and important conference that we attend every year.
Yeah, and something was mentioned earlier that is interesting, right? So it's the 2 weeks after the event, the custom t-shirt comes signed to your house. I follow a woman, we had her as a TEDx Hartford speaker, and she was a keynote in Canada. And where she spoke, it was a rink, hockey rink, and, she loved the event, et cetera. What she ended up posting on LinkedIn was they sent her a custom jersey with her last name on the back. And it was post-event. She wasn't expecting it. And she was saying how it was the best speaker appreciation gift she's ever received, right? So not only does it tie back to place, it ties back to the event, ties back to the facility, and it's just rad, right? So she's going to wear it. She's going to tell people about it. People are going to ask her about it. And I thought that was a really intelligent way to do that. And, Paul had mentioned we were down at ITC in Las Vegas at the event, and we talk a lot about, well, how can we make impact while we're at a place? And then once we leave the place, how can we still, have that same type of energy around us and even leading in? So what we ended up doing was we took our podcasting gear down to Vegas. We sat at a small, 36-inch round. We had 4 mics set up, 4 headphones set up, and we invited people in. So in advance of the event, we made a really silly GIF. We were pointing at our microphones, not taking ourselves too seriously. That got a lot of really positive attention and play. People were interacting with us there. They came down to the booth. They sat with us, and we recorded what we called microcasts, or what I call microcasts. So about 5 to 7 minute conversations. And then they talked about that. There was pictures taken of that activity. A lot of people had never been on a podcast before, so that was something cool, unique, and different. And then I threw the clips together that Paul had recorded on his 360 camera that sat in the center of the table. And now we've ended up with a 2 minute and 43-second video of every single one of those 23 guests, little bit of clips rotating around, the flying of the floor, give the sense to the people where if they weren't there, they're like, look at that energy. That's so cool. Or if they were there, they're like, oh, where am I in this video? I have to see myself. And it's getting so much play. I mean, I posted it yesterday afternoon and it has well over 650 watch minutes on it, which is insane. It's like, that's a lot of time. So I'm curious to see what that video will do. But going back to the point of creating something that people can interact with post event, there's definite value there. So my question to both of you is, for those who may not have a podcast or have a 360 cam, what are 2 ideas that an individual can do or a brand can do, take either angle that you want, to create energy post event to really kind of continue to share that story? So I guess, Allie, let's start with you.
Sure. So I would say, and I think we've said the word tangible a few times, but a tangible item, first off, like you mentioned with the ice rink and receiving a custom jersey with her name on it. I'll use an example from a project we just did, but Red Bull Guest House was hosted in Florida for F1, the races, and almost all the guests that were part of Guest House later received a custom jacket that was collaborated with Red Bull and Race Services. And Race Services is a large racing lifestyle brand and clothing company. And everyone had a custom patch on it. And these were handmade, so hand sewn together. They will never be made again. Like,
that's really cool.
The amount of thought that went into them, and it's pretty amazing. And they're canvas jackets, so it's the old school. Those people who were working on the cars, that's what they wore in the shops. They were wearing these canvas jackets, and everyone got one, and no one is the same because they were all hand sewn. So something tangible, I think, is a good option. And then number 2, something digital. And I can't speak educationally on this topic, but NFTs are a big craze. And you don't necessarily, NFTs are, I can't really tell where they're going and if it is going to continue to be a trend or if it's not, but you're still hearing it, you're seeing it, and that's a way to get a gift from a brand that's digital and that no one else is going to have. It's an original piece that's digital to you that you get to keep forever, and no one else is going to have it. So I would say a digital and tangible are 2 ideas of a way that brands can later on post-event show up to that consumer again and make a memorable impact.
We have an event coming up in December where one of the speakers is actually going to drop an NFT to the people in the audience. So I'll have to report back and let you know how it goes.
Please do.
So intrigued, and it's a piece of music that'll be performed that night. So it's super interesting.
Well, sorry, Laura, we could actually make little NFTs of everyone's individual clips, right? Video clips.
We could. This is why we ask these questions, because it's so fascinating. And Chip, what are your thoughts along those same lines?
Yeah, I think it's, having the digital and the tangible are to play up what Allie is saying, to go back to the music industry, for example, for me, when I used to be a concert goer all the time, the big one was being able to walk away. I'm going to date myself here for a second, with a CD of the concert or a handful of songs that I literally just heard, right? Being able to order that and have it in the mail to me 2 weeks later, or however long it took them to slice it together, to always have that, whether it was bootlegged or official, to have that piece of that concert with me forever, right? It's probably still in my basement somewhere, multiple bootlegs of that concert. But now obviously that would be a digital that would have shifted from the tangible to the digital in that example, right? And having some way to have that experience all over again, because it's all about creating that experience for the end user, right? Something that's memorable, something that they're always going to carry with them. And I think you can do that either digitally or with a tangible item.
How do you make people walk away with a sense of community? We're having a discussion about different groups that we've all been involved in. Somebody who works with Laura and I is into cars. He had 400 cars show up, to this event down in Westchester County here this last weekend, right? I mean, passionate car people, right? And how do you sort of like say, hey, you create a community here? It kind of keeps going? Do you have to let the people do this themselves? Is there anything you can do to say, we created some new friends and here they are and stamp, they came from here?
Yeah, I mean,
I can.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we run an outdoor horror movie series here at Hartford. And you want to talk about a niche audience and community, it's horror movie fans, right? That event is my baby, I'm not going to lie. We call it Spooky Popcorn is the name of it. But that is one where we are creating that series for a very specific audience. And we take feedback from people, what movies they want to see in upcoming series. I mean, you create this sort of community through the experience. For you, it was with the car enthusiasts, right? For me, it's with horror movie fans. And you connect through your shared love of that one thing, whatever that is. And so, and again, it goes back to that question of who are you creating an event for and why, right? We saw a need. Everybody does outdoor movie series, but who does outdoor horror movies? Nobody. And so we saw a need there. We saw a gap, and we said, let's fill it. Let's fill it with horror movies. And so we did. And it's grown every year in the 4 years we've done it because more and more people start talking about, wow, I just went and saw The Thing on a 24-foot blow-up screen outside in downtown Hartford, right? And so it just becomes word of mouth. You're connecting with people through that shared love of whatever that one thing is.
Shout out to Nassau for being a sponsor of Spooky Popcorn this year, which we are.
We are. I've seen that. I saw the posters. I didn't connect the dots, right?
You guys were actually a sponsor of our family-friendly, weird summer movie series where we were showing non-typical, the same thing, non-typical family summer films like Labyrinth and Never-Ending Story. Like weird stuff that nobody else shows. So yes, thank you, Nassau. That was great success.
All right, hey, this is terrific, Laura.
Oh, and my favorite question. I love to get at the heart of the why, right? You all could be doing 1,000,001 things every single day, but you wake up and you do the work that you do. Allie, what is your why?
I will always answer the same, I think. And I have been working in events for 7 or 8 years. And the way that I started was a little assistant. I was filling coolers up, I think. I was filling coolers with ice. And I was a college student. And as lame as that sounds and as boring as that sounds, I loved watching the people attending get that cold product and smile and walk away and have fun at their event. So that's such like a small little detail, right? And it's not something that anyone else would notice. But the thing that keeps me going and the why is to please people and to make them happy and to see them walk away having that memorable moment and knowing that it's something they won't forget, or we made them happy in that moment just for a second. They might not remember it tomorrow, but I think walking away with knowing that someone had a good time, or also just like going back to community events where Paul was speaking on, and you could be asked to do an event for a community that you have no relevance to. I have worked a lot of gaming events and I don't game. You have to be authentic in that, and showing up not knowing anything about the game is not the way to do that. So a piece of that we also manage at events is hospitality and participants. So not just the consumers walking in, but those participants. And I love building relationships with every participant or every guest I get to interact with, and being adaptable to those people. Even though you might not be relevant in their community, you can speak to it or you can ask questions and you can care about it. And knowing that they walk away being like, wow, she doesn't know crap about esports, but she cares and she wants to know, and their agency wants to help our community grow. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I think the big thing is the consumers, the guests, the participants, watching them walk away with a good experience is why I do it every day.
And Chip, what is your why?
So I used to get asked all the time if I played an instrument whenever I was dealing with a music event. And if the answer is no, I don't play an instrument. I'm an enabler. And as an event person, I think Allie would agree with this, I'm an enabler. I enable musicians to perform. I enable movies to be shown. I enable artists to display their artwork, whatever the event is. And I get great pleasure out of not only helping people have a good time, right? The attendee, right? Same thing. I love seeing people smile and walk away from an event having a great time. That's a great thing for me. But also allowing that artist or that participant to share their work with other people, whether that's, again, fine art or music or movies or esports or cars or whatever that looks like, being able to take that and give them the platform to share it with their audience. I get great enjoyment out of doing that, out of being that enabler, that piece, because, and we can talk about this separately for another hour. Events don't happen. They don't spring up out of the ground with pixie dust. Somebody has to be there to do all the dirty work. And I don't mind being that person doing that dirty work. That's just what it comes down to.
It's fun.
Well, listen, Chip, thank you for what you've done in the Hartford community. And Allie, listen, you created a smile on my face at that event. So it was a blast. So what's the best way for people, Allie, to find out more about you, track your company, follow it? There's a TikTok.
I wish I was skilled at TikTok. No, you can check out our website, throwingstarcollective.com. We also have Instagram at throwing__collective. So yeah, you can keep up to date with us in either of those places.
Terrific. Chip, how about you? How do people learn more and follow the work you're doing?
Hartford.com. So the Hartford Bid runs Hartford.com. You can find all of our events up there, our contact info, more information about all the great work that our ambassadors do. It's all up there on Hartford.com.
Okay. Excellent. Laura, thanks. Allie, Chip. Hey, thanks to our listeners. And listen, give us feedback who we should have on here. We're always trying to bring good ideas about innovation, startups, and community. So thanks, and join us again next week for another episode of the Reimagine podcast.